Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins, and welcome to Financial Lovemaking, where we talk about love, life, money, and everything in between. I'm here with my buddy, partner, and co-host, the entertainment director at Ebony Magazine, Miss S. Tia Brown. How you doing today, Tia?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing really well, really well. I hope you had a good weekend.
I did. I did. Happy Monday, and happy Monday to all you guys as well.
Yes, absolutely. Happy Monday, and we were talking about Viola Davis,
Yes, the
and
Oscars were this weekend, so Oscar buzz is everywhere. Go ahead, voice. Sorry to interrupt.
whatever, man. Oscar buzz, get out of my face. That's how I feel about the Oscars. I don't watch the Oscars. Not interested. I watch award shows that matter. Now the Oscar, but here's the thing. But I do have concern for the black actors and actresses and what they go through. And one of the things that I noticed was that the beautiful and amazing Viola Davis was talking about how things have been rough for her since she got her Oscar nomination. And she's the second person to kind of say that things have not gone well since she was nominated. What was it? Monique had won an Oscar, right?
Absolutely.
And was upset because she said that she'd been blackballed. And now you have Viola Davis, coming out and basically saying that she's not really getting the roles and opportunities she'd hoped for. Things are not going the way a lot of people think they should go when you win an Oscar. And I was just curious about. I mean, what do you think about that? I mean, is this kind of a trend, or what's the deal with that?
Well, they have the Oscar curse, right? Where a person, this is white or black, like Marissa Tomei comes to mind. You win an Oscar, then you disappear into obscurity, right? But we also know for African American actors, there's such a challenge to get roles in general. So even when you get that acclaim that you think may help you transition into getting, more opportunities, it doesn't always happen. Viola spoke very candidly about it, not just being about the Oscar. It's also about ageism in Hollywood. Right, so she's an African American woman. She's beautiful, but she talks about not having the stereotypical standard of beauty, which is another element, right? Then you have ageism. She's a woman of a certain age, and she's a person of color. So there's so many variables that go into her marketability because a lot of times you don't have black women getting lead roles. They're cast as the friend. They're not considered, to have that bankable appeal here and overseas. Another thing that Viola talked about that I thought was really important was that, people say you start a production company and, life is in your hand. Now, she has this company, Juvie Productions, with her husband, Julius Tenen, who's also an actor, and they have some good projects in the pipeline. But, she talks about this. You have to get funding for those projects. Nothing is guaranteed. Someone else still has to greenlight it, either for it to be broadcast on a major network or to be distributed, or you have to be able to finance that film out of your own pockets. And, that can be really a challenging thing if you don't want to put all of your eggs literally in one basket. Now, when you look at what's coming down the pipeline for Viola via her own production company, she has some big things. She has this Lila and Eve film, and that co-stars Jennifer Lopez. A huge crossover star. She's been on American Idol the last few seasons. She's had an album. But having a Latina and an African American woman as the lead, some people may say, we're not sure how bankable this is going to be. And then she has some other programs down the pipeline with TV and smaller film productions. So we'll see what happens. But is Viola Davis's truth something that's startling to me? Absolutely not. We see this over and over again. So this is why it's so important for us to support the projects that we like, especially when they're being made the way we want them to be made through your own production company, which means what? More money in the hands of that family.
I think that I empathize with what Viola is saying. I really do. Um, but I think that the idea that it's hard for her or that things are not going well for her, I have a hard time really buying into that because it's all relative, right? I think that like Viola Davis will never starve. She'll never be homeless. She'll never have an empty bank account, most likely, I assume. But then again, maybe she could. But my point here, if she overspends and all that stuff, yes. But if she's a normal person that spends her money in a normal way, I don't think Viola will ever really have the kind of real struggle that that people really go through when they say that things are not really working out for them. And the reason I bring that up is this. Um, we have to think about what it means. I think that part of confronting the intimidation we feel, from Hollywood, as black people particularly, comes down to really understanding or redefining what it means to be successful. If I make a film and I say, I'm only successful if I get a bank to loan me $10 million to make the film. If I get a production company to distribute the film around the world, if my film makes $20, $30 million, if I think that's the only thing that makes me successful, then I am reducing my odds of achieving success. I'm becoming more dependent upon the very institutions that have shown me time and again that they're going to discriminate against me. Why can't black filmmakers make films where they say, okay, you know what, our budget isn't going to be 10 million or 5 million, it's going to be $500,000, it's going to be 200,000.
Well, we have seen filmmakers do that, number one. And number two, I think it's unfair to say that we shouldn't be allowed to thrive in the same manner as others. Now, I hear your point in saying that we have to expand our perception of what success is. And, you have indie films, whether they're mainstream or geared towards a certain audience, that do have a smaller budget. But if someone else can tell our story, or someone else can tell a story that we can tell and make $100 million, I don't think there's anything wrong with us telling that same story.
I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But here's what's going on. Let me give you an analogy to help you understand it. Imagine if somebody's in an abuse.
Help me understand it, because I'm not buying.
I will help you understand it. It's not to say our stories are not as valuable, but what I'm saying is, imagine if someone's married or in an abusive marriage, and they're married to a multimillionaire, and they say, I've got to get out of this marriage, but I'm afraid to lose the money. But someone says, go ahead and take the plunge, just divorce this person, get what you can from the divorce and move on. So let's say they go from having $100 million in the bank to having $2 million in the bank. Then, the person can look at it a couple ways. They could say, okay, I've got $2 million in the bank and I'm free. Or they could say, my life is horrible. It's been rough. I can't buy as many Louis Vuittons as I used to buy. I can't have 4 Porsches in the garage anymore. I can only have one. And my point here is that you can't sort of become dependent upon commodities provided by your oppressor and still think that you're going to somehow overcome the oppression. You can't.
I don't totally disagree. But first, let me say this. You are so sexist sometimes with your statements. Let me help you understand my perspective.
Wait, what did I say that was sexist?
Let me help you understand.
No. I would have said that to you if you were a man. I would have said it if you were a dude. Because you don't get it.
I do understand that there's an imbalance, but what I believe is that if you are striving for parity, you have to understand that there's just not one way to get there. So yes, your lane in terms of doing the indie films and funding our own things is one way, but there is also room for those who say, I want parity. If I have the same product, if I have the same credentials, we need to knock down this door too. So in my opinion, let me help you understand, darling. We need people fighting on all fronts. Now, I don't disagree with your notion that we shouldn't be totally materialistic, but I don't think that people are always saying that. One of Viola's peers is Meryl Streep, and she talks about them being good friends and having come up in the industry and Meryl being a great support. Well, there are many, many roles that Meryl Streep is considered for that they would never call Viola for.
Right, because Hollywood is white and Jewish. It was built for white and Jewish people. It's not built for black people. That's what I think a lot of black people don't get. You can't move into somebody else's house and expect to shift around the furniture. It doesn't work that way. If black people controlled Hollywood, if Hollywood was an all-black thing, like a big HBCU, whites would be at a disadvantage as well. Because everything will be shaped around our culture, who we are, what we want to do, what we think is important, our value system. And if you're showing up to the table asking for equality, but you have nothing of financial substance to add to the conversation, it's very difficult to achieve that equality. So you can't get equality by begging. You just can't.
You can't. So I think the inclusion means if I have the same credentials and I'm able to tell a similar story and I have an audience carved out, my story needs to be given an opportunity. And I think that's why more people are speaking out. And that's why more people are going the independent route to show that they can build the finances. I just don't think that you only have to do it the indie route.
Well, I agree. I don't think there's any one way to skin the cat, but I can certainly say that I believe inclusion is an illusion. I believe that if you look at
You don't
America,
think it'll ever happen?
I'm not going to say I don't think it'll ever happen. I'm going to say I don't know if it's going to happen in our lifetime because you have a society where in every single measuring stick of quality of life between whites and blacks, there's a huge disparity, and white folks don't care as a collective. I'm not talking about all of them, but as a collective, in terms of how they vote and what they care about, they're not interested in giving reparations. They don't care a whole lot about the inequalities in the prison industrial complex or the educational inequalities or the unemployment gap. Where we're dealing with 14% unemployment and stuff like that. And so my point here is that I think that when we talk about inclusion, we have to really kind of reassess what it means for us to go to Sony Studios and say, you guys need to include me. You guys aren't including me. You're not giving me the same opportunities as Meryl Streep. I think that's unfair. I don't think Hollywood has shown any interest whatsoever in saying, you know what, yeah, let's treat Viola and Meryl the same. Let's put $50 million in both of their projects and let them go worldwide. Because at the end of the day, race is going to make a difference. So I'm not saying that Viola can't be successful and that Viola doesn't have a good point.
You're saying that she should expect less.
No, I'm not saying she should expect less. I'm saying that it's better to build than it is to beg. I really believe that. I believe that when you're building, even if you look at when Hollywood began, when you look at the founding fathers and mothers of what we have out west in Hollywood, when those people built their thing, they built it because they couldn't get opportunities elsewhere, and they said, we're going to build our own. And I guarantee you, the first movie produced out of Hollywood wasn't $100 million blockbuster. It was a tiny little film that made a tiny amount of money, but it was the beginning of something big. So I think that for people of color, I think it's okay for us to say, let's go over here, let's build something. We'll put out a film. Our budget won't be $20 million. It's gonna be $500,000. We're not gonna make $50 million in revenue. Maybe we're gonna make $1 million, but it's a seed. It begins the process towards something bigger that belongs to you, and that's what I would like to see more of in our community.
Okay, so I'll put that question out to our viewers. Should African Americans in Hollywood be more focused on building their own than begging for inclusion? We'd love to hear what you guys have to say rather.